so fresh, looking so fresh. When I walk by, breaking their necks. Waiting in line at the team store. Now I'm feeling fly like a condor. Eyes on me when I walk through the door. Man, I wish I bought a couple more. Cause I really love my city. It was worth every penny. If it were at my show, then I know they gon' tip me. Think I might add a couple patches. If you think it's ugly, you capping. Now my whole outfit matching. Never going out of fashion.
Welcome, everyone. Talking for Hours podcast and YouTube show. Ben Fadden here with a special guest, someone that I love listening to on the radio and now with Section 1904, and that is Darren Smith. It's been a long time coming, but could not wait for this day. It's going to be awesome. Darren, thanks so much for coming on.
Well, Ben, I appreciate it. Thanks so much. You mentioned it. It's been a long time coming, so I apologize. I know we've been trying to find some common time here with your schedule and my schedule, which doesn't feel like it should be so difficult to work with, but thanks for being patient and for hanging in there and making sure that we can get this done. Thanks, man.
Yeah, of course. It's pretty good timing, I would say, for you to start Section 1904 with John. And anyone that hasn't listened, it's a new venture that they're going on right now with the podcast. And you can go to their website, section1904.com. But yeah, just speak to the timing of this. Obviously, Merrill extension, that Profar news, SDFC, now we know like what the team looks like and all that. It's a good time, I would say, to be launching this, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. You always wonder about it, for all these months, right? Since I've been off radio, I've been thinking about when the right time was, if I was going to come back. And that was a question, if I was going to come back and do this, if I was going to be involved in local media, because, after 20 years of doing it, Ben, there was a part of me that's like, maybe that was it. Like maybe the best part of it is in the rear view mirror, and maybe it's time to find something else to do. And I would have been cool with that. Really, I would have been cool with that because I was pretty satisfied with everything that I was able to do and accomplish in my career in San Diego on radio. But, I just felt like with a MLS team coming and everything that happened at the end of the season last year with the Padres, I just was like, gosh, there's so much happening, another season with Wave. Like it just felt like there was so much happening. And I wanted to make another run at doing something that could be fun, something that was going to be fun and something that was going to be different and something that was going to be a bit challenging, which you probably know as well as anybody. When you're launching your own thing, it's all great when you're able to put out a product, but there's a lot of things happening behind the scenes that occupy a tremendous amount of your time. Truthfully, I wanted to start something a little sooner. I wanted to get ahead of the MLS season, but I had an opportunity to work with SDFC. So I said, well, let me pause this. Let me just delay this Section 1904 project for a little while to figure some things out. And, the idea was I was going to be on the broadcast for the first 5 weeks of the season, which for those that pay really super close attention was what it was. And now I got a little bit more time because I'm settled into a different role with them, doing some midweek stuff and doing some pregame and halftime and postgame on radio. So it just felt like, there was an opportunity here to jump into this space and, to be efficient with, what it was and how it was that I wanted to do stuff. So, fingers crossed. I hope people are enjoying it. It's not too far of a departure from what the radio show was for all those years. And, we'll see where it goes. There's no guarantees, as there's no guarantees in how this sort of stuff works, but it's been a lot of fun so far. It's been a little challenging, but you're right. It's just such an amazing time in San Diego, whether it's the specifics of a 7-0 start, the success that SDFC has had, 2 new seasons heading into the summer. So, it just feels like there won't be any shortage of content for us each and every day.
Yeah. What do you eventually want, you and John, what do you eventually want this to end up being? I'm seeing some blog posts, obviously the podcast, adding more people into this. What eventually do you want this to be?
I think ultimately, what we'd like to do is, get this project off the ground. John has more of a background in writing than I do. I was a writer a million years ago, and I decided to focus on broadcasting, specifically on radio, clearly. And, I think what we want to do is, Ben, like we just sort of see the way the business is trending and how San Diego ends up getting treated. Whether, and it's not to, to go and attack at other people who are friends of mine who are employed, but you just sort of see, like there's this erosion of what it is that's happening in the radio business, newspaper business. And, I think ultimately what our goals are is, our goal is to create something on a local level that is owned and operated by people in San Diego, that focuses on the things that people in San Diego mostly care about. And, you have that ability to do that when you are a radio show. The only problem is radio shows are oftentimes, they are owned by companies that are located in a different part of the country. And, you can focus on San Diego based stuff when you're a writer for a newspaper or for, for The Athletic. But again, those companies, they're owned by companies, those companies are headquartered someplace else. And, sometimes, especially, in this market and in the changing landscape of media, San Diego, from my experience, isn't always prioritized when it comes to some of the decision-making and the media cuts, right? Which is a real thing. So, listen, we're pie in the sky about this. And, our idea is that we really think that we can create a local media company that will serve the interests of people in San Diego best. And hopefully that's what it becomes. But for today, we're literally just trying to get podcasts off the ground each and every morning so that we can give people some content and reasons to keep coming back.
Yeah. And that's what they're doing right now. For anyone that's just starting to follow, it's, I believe, the first month, right? It's going to be free, and then we'll see what happens from there.
We'll see. Yeah, we're sort of in a wait and see. We have this idea again, because advertising, I see, trust me, I've paid attention to your page, pal. I'm like, it's interesting. I see how other people are incorporating advertising, and, maybe that's the right way to go. We're going to see if there's enough interest for a sustained, profitable, subscriber based, fan supported, fan owned model. We'll see. Some people have told me that's a crazy idea, maybe. But, I think it's at least worth exploring before we decide to see what other options are out there.
Yeah. And especially with the experience that you have in this market. I mean, for me, I'm 22, and there's local companies that have reached out to me. For you, I can imagine that will help, with what you've gone through and the experience that you have. Talking about serving the San Diegans, I hope that you felt the love, the support, you and Marty, when all that went down. Did you feel that, and have you felt that since?
Yeah, absolutely. It was really, it was very flattering. It's so often you unfortunately gravitate towards some of the negative commentary when you're sitting in our positions at times, and it's easy to get focused on that. And, you understand, as disciplined as you might be, that does not represent, it doesn't represent the majority. But it's easy to zero in on that. But, I thought it was great to hear from a lot of people that you respect, whether it was colleagues, current colleagues, former colleagues, people who live here locally, people who lived outside of the market. I especially there's just no way you can say thank you enough to the people that supported the show, because it was, even up into this day, we're going on 9 months now, probably more. And, somebody would say, hey, I miss listening to you on the radio. And you're like, that means a lot. It really does mean a lot that our show played a small role in people's everyday lives. I live in Imperial Beach, right? Will Holder, Will Holder's become a friend of mine. And I saw him one day when he was walking his dogs around the neighborhood. He's like, I never realized that your show was such a part of my daily routine, And you never really know how to answer that, because it makes you feel, it's incredibly flattering and it's humbling. But you're like, is it, it's just it's hard to put into words what that means. And it helped a lot, whether it was messages from you, whether it was messages from others in the market, messages from people who you kind of thought you didn't really get along with, people who you're like, oh, I kind of thought that person thought I was a douche, and even those people would reach out at a time and say, sorry, this sort of stuff happened, enjoyed your show. So absolutely. And it was incredibly helpful. And it didn't, I wasn't blindsided. I keep saying, I wasn't blindsided by the decision. I sort of sensed that this is where this was heading, and I was okay with it. I was comfortable with it. But even still, just to have people reach out and take time out of their days to say things. Somebody dropped off a handwritten note at my house. That's just incredible stuff. And like I said, to to again appreciate that somebody considers you a part of their daily routine is just something that's difficult to put into words, but very much appreciated. And I thanked everybody. I thank everybody and continue to thank everybody for all that support.
Yeah, and I can say for myself, like noon, if I was available, I was like, yeah, I got to be listening at noon every day. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, and I still do obviously now with this new podcast that you got going. We will get to Padres and SDFC. One more question about this new podcast. Just your level of happiness that it's the freedom now, right? Where you can talk about what you want to talk about. You can talk about it for as long as you want to. You can talk about it for not as long. And I know with this show, this channel that I have, that's something that I love is if I want to talk about the Aztecs for 10 minutes, I can do that. If I want to talk about SDFC, I can do that. If I want to talk for an hour about the Padres and I just have thoughts, I can do that. Or if it's for 10 minutes for a short video, I can do that. But yeah, just I guess your freedom to do what you want to do now.
Yeah, it's huge, and especially that, as for the last couple of years, I found that my listening habits had changed so much from being in the car or being by a radio, that my listening habits had changed so much that I had gotten used to listening to exactly how you're describing, right? 30, 40 minutes here or an hour there. And some days it's on subject matter that you care about. Sometimes it's not. So, once I started developing different listening habits where I wasn't just listening to radio at certain times. And, it's not to say I don't ever check in to hear what's going on. I still love my dudes, John and Jim, and appreciate them. And we'll text them. But, I just felt like, wow, us having to sit through all these commercials. One day I was driving down the road and I was in the car before 10 a.m. and I wanted to hear what Ben and Woods had to say. And like I popped 97.3 on the station and it was in a commercial break. And then I stopped and I needed gas and I put gas in my car and I got back in the car and it was still in a commercial break. And I was like, what? My mind just sort of like, I didn't like, I processed it differently. You know what I mean? Like, and I had done that for however many years, for 20 years. So, I think, having I just believe that there's an efficient way of doing this where, we were limited by FCC rules and commercials and all sorts of stuff and music. And, it's just it's changed. And like you said, there are some days where you wake up where I don't ever want to feel like I'm forced into talking about something. And the structure of these shows for 3 and 4 hours a day, unfortunately, I think what happens is, and I can hear it. Like I know how to listen to it. You aren't doing a show. You're kind of filling. Like you're filling segments. And I don't ever really want to feel like I'm filling a segment again. I want to feel like there's always going to be something every single day that I'm going to be interested in talking about. And that might be 30 minutes. It might be 45 minutes. It might be an hour and a half. It might be 2 hours. Right. But, I don't ever want to feel like we're just kind of going through our phones going like, well, who should we call? Like who would be available today that would be a good guest? I just don't ever want to sound, I have a friend who said, his biggest critique of the show is sometimes they sounded bored on the radio. And I had really no argument, Ben, against that. I was like, I know what you mean. And you're right. There are times where I probably was bored. I think the show was really, really good. When it was good, it was great. I think there were times where it's like, yeah, if I'm not into this, I can't lie. Like, I'm not good lying. And the audience is too smart and they see through that. So, I think that what's exciting about doing something that's different is you can totally cater it and structure it to what it is that you want it to be each and every day. And it might not be for everybody, but at least that I'll show up every day and I'll be into it. Like I will be into it. And it's something that I will care about, even if it's not something that everybody who's listening will care about.
Yeah. And you can hear the enthusiasm in both of you and John's voices. Like you want to talk about it. And yeah, like as a listener to radio myself, whenever someone would, and maybe they did want to talk about the NFL, but I feel like most of the time that's just,
Right.
It was a guest that you had to have on.
Yeah.
And that's just what it was. I don't want to hear about the NFL. I'm in San Diego. I don't care, and so some people may like that, but having like enthusiasm about what you're talking about, and having it be San Diego based, I think that's going to bring maybe even more listeners to it or to stick with it. And obviously it's not being on the radio, so there's no like commercial break, and so you can stay there
Right.
with the show. Yeah, let's get to Padres though. So I want to start with AJ because he was obviously a frequent topic on the show. for you guys. And I think he's done an incredible job, since Peter passed with the circumstances that he's had to deal with. And I know I'm biased, but I feel like he's one of the best general managers in baseball, and he's proven it. Again, the circumstances I think are a huge part of this, but also the lengths that the whole Jackson Merrill story about being on the football field or the bleachers and looking back, like I can always listen to that again and again and again. But just do you think he's one of the best GMs in baseball? And what do you have to say about the job that he's done to have this roster be at this point? I know ownership, obviously, if he was with the Rays, it would be different, but he's done an incredible job, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I'm almost at a point now where it's tough for me to think of the Padres without thinking of AJ Preller being the president of baseball operations and general manager, right? Like, I'm almost to that point now where I'm like, well, who would you even replace him with? Like it's to that point where it's hard not to think of him almost like the color brown at this point, right? It's just so synonymous with the Padres because he's been here since end of 2014, and it's 2025. So, and that wasn't always the case. I thought that there were some years here where, I wasn't really quite clear where it was going and wasn't sure what was happening. And you heard this guy with this reputation for being able to go find prospects anywhere, everywhere. He'd, go be sleeping in different places, different parts of the world that you couldn't find on a map. It's like, well, where is that? Like where is the fruit of all that labor? So, I think it took me a while professionally, to truly have an appreciation for Preller. And honestly, I think sometimes, getting to know some of the people who are around him and hearing what it's like day in, day out, and hearing how driven he is. And like, I get it. Like, everybody's driven to win and everybody wants to win. But, hearing that like, if that's the biggest flaw that you can point out is like, he's obsessive and driven in everything that he wants to do. And he's demanding and all that. I don't know that that's necessarily something to condemn a person for. I mean, it seems to be a good fit. Like, it was just such a good fit with him and Peter Seidler. And, that was the one thing after Peter passed. Unfortunately, you sort of were like, well, is it still going to work? Is he still going to have that person in his corner the way that Peter was always in his corner? And obviously in 2024, it worked and came off great, right? 93 wins. And it seems to be off to another really, really good start now. So, I mean, is he one of the best GMs? Yeah. I mean, I think, he's one of the longest tenured at this point. I was thinking the other day when I was driving around, where is he? Like, where is he compared to Kevin Towers? Like where is he? Because Kevin Towers for me was always the best GM, and it's a different game. Like you said, I mean, 4 division titles for KT, 96, 98, right? 05, 06. Preller's gone deep, in the postseason for a couple of seasons. So, I mean, I just think he works well. I just think it fits well here. I don't know how to compare him to other general managers around the league. But I think he's really good at what he does. I think he's really been good at what he does. And I was a skeptic, and I admit that I was a skeptic. And there were years where I was like, I don't see this. I thought for certain after the whole Jace Tingler thing blew up, I thought that should have been it. But it wasn't, and Peter wanted to stick with him, and I think that was a good thing for the organization. So, I don't know where I'd rank him. Rankings and all that sort of stuff aren't really my thing, but I just think he's a good fit for San Diego, and he's a good fit for the San Diego Padres.
Yeah, I loved you talk about the Peter and AJ relationship there.
Right.
I loved the press conference yesterday, seeing those 3 baseball rats up there. The player who's the baseball rat, it's Merrill. The manager, the coach, who's the baseball rat, it's Schilt. GM, who's a baseball rat, it's Preller. Like, having those 3 up there, I thought was amazing. And they all, they could go out to dinner and it's going to be baseball. Like, that's just what it is.
Oh yeah. They're going to close the place down, dude. Like, they're not just going to go to dinner and be like, okay, like, check, please. You're going to be cleaning the tables of the restaurant, and those 3 are still going to be sitting there. And I kind of know this from what somebody told me about a downtown restaurant one night where Schilt and Preller did close the place down, because they were just sitting there and they were talking baseball, and they're putting chairs up on the tables, and they're like, oh, okay, I guess we really got to go. The lights are on, like this is this past off season. So, I do think that, those guys are all kind of kindred spirits in that sense. And you're right. You do have the GM, you do have his managerial version. And now seemingly you do have that player version in Jackson Merrill.
Yeah, that's awesome. Your boy Profar, though, there's obviously a lot of discussion there these past couple of days. And this, though, should not, I don't think, and it will by some people, obviously, but I don't think this should change what we thought of his 2024 season. If he was tested 8 times and he didn't get popped, then I'm still taking it for what it is. I think, did Profar want to prove himself to Braves fans and live up to a contract? I mean, we totally don't know exactly what was going on there. But for me, 2024 and 2022, it's still going to be special years, and I'm still always going to love Profar.
I'm 1,000% with you.
Yeah.
I've had friends and former colleagues that are like, oh man, are your bromance with Profar, must be over. I was like, no, not at all. I'll never, I thought Mike Schilt gave a great answer. He's like, I loved him a couple of hours ago. I love him no less right now. And I never had that kind of relationship with him. We were kind of cool and dapping on the field, all that sort of stuff. But, for me as a fan, and it's an easy place, Ben, for me to say this sort of stuff because I'm not a parent. I remember having Adnan Verka of MLB Network on after Fernando got suspended. And Fernando was his son's favorite player. And he's like, it was so hard to explain to my son what had happened with Fernando. And like, I remember Adnan trying to process that and talk us through that, what it was like as a parent. And I'm sure lots of people that are here locally have experienced something similar. So, it's not just the MLB guy. He was just the one that planted that seed. And, it's easy for me to say, because, like I said, I don't have to explain that to a child. I never bailed on any of my friends when they got in trouble. And I've had plenty of friends who were knuckleheads and got in trouble, and they never bailed on me. And, I'm disappointed that it happened. I'm disappointed that he's in the situation, just because I hate that it might be a stain. I don't think it takes anything away from what happened last year, because so much of what happened last year was quantifiable in terms of metrics, but so much of it was also just what he brings to the clubhouse. You know what I mean? Like, that's the kind of stuff that when you talk about Profar, I don't remember exactly what his batting average was. I know he went to the All-Star game and he was really good and he did a bunch of things and had a career year. But, what made Profar was you brought him into a clubhouse that was a nightmare 2 seasons ago. And he was part of the airing out of the clubhouse, him and Jackson Merrill. And that's what Profar brings to the table. So, I don't view it that way. I don't, like you said, he was tested 8 times. That's all we can really go by. And something happened this offseason. And I'm not privy to it, but, I hate it for him. And, I hate it now that this is his start with the Braves too. Like, that's a brutal way to start. That team's 0-7, as you and I are talking.
Yeah.
And their big free agent signing is popped for 80 games. That's a hard thing to recover from. Like, that's a really, really hard thing to recover from. That being said, I do believe that guy, personality-wise, can recover from it because of who he is. And I think other people with different personalities would struggle. And I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but, I do think that he at least, will have the ability to bounce back from it in a way that a lot of other players won't. But I was disappointed. I was just disappointed for him. I was just disappointed because I think it's just bad. It's not bad because it's a stain on the game or stain on this or that or the Padres. I'm just disappointed because what he brings to the sport is something that the sport needs, which is joy and competitiveness and an attitude and a willingness to do anything and everything and be that sparky kind of player. Like, Padres needed that last year. They needed that as much as they needed whatever he was doing statistically.
Yeah, him and Merrill, I would say, are definitely very alike with that, where sure, Merrill's the young one, Profar's the vet, but both guys that they're so happy to be on the baseball field and playing this game, and they don't take it for granted. And they just love being around that clubhouse with teammates and having fun. And so, yeah, when someone like that, sure, he's not on the Padres, but when someone like that ends up, getting popped like that, yeah, it sucks. And
it does.
But he's always going to be ours in San Diego. He's always going to have a place in San Diego. I think that's part of what makes sports pretty special as well. So obviously wishing him the best, but yeah, that sucked to hear. Moving to this year's team though, I'm seeing a continuation of 2024. It's a lot of guys that are still here, obviously, but even with new additions, whether that's now Brandon Locker's here too, but on the opening day roster, or it's Gavin Sheets going opposite field, or Elias Diaz laying down a bunt, like whatever it takes, this team is doing it so far. And so my question to you is, what will it take for the Padres to go take down the Dodgers and go to the World Series, win the World Series? Obviously, health is a big thing, But for me, it's just playing the fundamental baseball like this. Obviously, you need the performances in the postseason from these big guys, which wasn't enough in those last couple of games. But yeah, your thoughts on the Padres' start so far this year and what they need to do?
Well, I mean, they've let everybody, and I think most importantly, the Dodgers know they are not going to go away. That 2024 wasn't just a fluke, that they were able to get a bunch of lucky bounces and get some contributions from some unlikely sources, some players like Matt Waldron or what have you. And I think it's important to remember too, it's not a fluke because the team didn't decide to trade away Dylan Cease or trade away Luis Ariz, right? Like this was a big offseason storyline about, well, are the Padres, Padres had a chance, Ben, like they had a chance. How many times did you have to listen to some Dodger on a Mookie Betts podcast being like, man, they were the best team, and it's sort of the, you guys blew it, you guys, you had us and you couldn't close the deal. And now we're going to go out there and now we're going to, get Blake Snell or, and, and then the idea, the secondary thought, right? The secondary domino was you guys blew it. And now this is an offseason where you have all sorts of ownership issues and you're going to have to trade away at least one of these guys, right? I mean, you're crazy not to trade away one of these upcoming free agents. Didn't trade away any of them. Went out there and got Nick Pivetta. Wow. Like where did that deal come from? And, a bit under the radar, I grant you. But, now all of a sudden, right, Gavin Sheets starts to look like the kind of player similar to the kind of player that was brought in last year. Not Cesar Rise, but, Peralta type, right? So all of a sudden you're like, they're not going anywhere. Like I think that's sort of the, and who knows what can happen in this crazy sport and injuries and such. But I think that's the most important thing is like I worried a little bit about that things were gonna, that was such an opportunity, like when Manny said unfinished business, I'm like, no, that business was finished, dude. Like, that season's over. You can't go back and have the Dodgers dead to rights like you guys did. You're gonna have to do it all over again. And I think they're up for it. I think what they've said early on is they're up for it. And they're up for it organizationally. And I think they certainly have proven out of the gates, circumstances being what they are with Atlanta and Cleveland, that they're up for it on the field. So, I think that's really exciting. I think that's exciting for the way it's begun, obviously. And I think it's, exciting for how it sets up the rest of the season. Don't you? Like, all these people predicting, well, their ownership, like they're not going to be able to keep these guys. It might not be a responsible thing to do. And they're like, hey, like we have a natural break point where we're going to probably lose a player or two in free agency at the very least. But instead of just saying, well, we had our shot and I guess it's back to the drawing board. They've decided, no, man, we're going to roll with this. Like we're going to roll with this again. That was really good last year and we came really close. And instead of shrinking, what we're going to do is we're going to show back up. And yeah, we got knocked down, but we're going to come up and we're going to keep swinging. And I think that's pretty exciting to think about the way this unfolds for the rest of the year.
Yeah, very exciting. And I want to keep giving credit to ownership, to AJ Preller. I mean, there's been a lot of criticism of John Seidler, and I'm not saying John Seidler is the driving force behind the Merrill extension. Like it's been years in the works, right? But to make a commitment, and people forget, like everyone is saying, oh, John Seidler, his first move, Jackson Merrill, great. No, it was Nick Pivetta, I'm pretty sure. Right. And so, like, the commitment continues to be there. And yeah, this team, I thought that, yeah, it seems like 2024, that's their best chance because of the situation, the talent on that team, all that. But, I mean, yeah, it's been a very entertaining start. And they have shown that it's a team still. They're together. They're playing fundamental, good baseball. And they're doing what it takes to win baseball games. And so, yeah, very encouraging start. And it's not against the Marlins. It's not against whoever. It's against two playoff teams from last year. Sure, there's injuries, but it's still impressive baseball that they have played. And I'm going to be very interested. I was talking about, I think yesterday, the Dodgers and Padres aren't playing till June. And then it's like 7 games in 10 or 11 days there. And then 13, obviously, the rest of the way starting in June. I love that because now we're going to have time to see really who these teams are and health and all that, instead of having a series early on and then 5 months, down the road, we're going to be like, I don't even remember what happened in that series.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, I do too. And I think you're right. I mean, I think that's it's a really astute observation because, if there was a 4-game series right out of the gate against the Dodgers, all sorts of indelible conclusions would have been drawn based on that, right? And that it would have been narrative. It wouldn't have actually meant anything. But more importantly than anything else is, just that the Padres have come out of the gate and been like, yo, we're not going anywhere. Like our season ended disappointingly last year, but we are going to arrive here determined to put ourselves back in that situation again. And this time we'll get through them. And if not, we'll go down swinging. But, I think just saying to the rest of the world, I don't really care about the Dodgers start, Ben. I got to be honest. Like, I don't care at all that they're at 8-0. They should be, right, based on everything. But I just am really, really impressed by the way this team came out and even not a great performance from King, not a great performance from Cease, the first 2 out of the chute, right? And just the way that they have come out and played, to your point, and played well and taken extra bases and played solidly defensively. I'm like, yeah, that is, for as much as I will tell you, like 7 games, let's calm down. But, how you start, especially after the disappointment of last year, I think was important. I actually do think if you're ever going to put extra emphasis on the beginning of a season, it would be this year based on the way last year ended. So, that's all we got up into this point. And, that to me is like, okay, that's impressive. And I don't think it's just me on a local level saying that. I think there's people all across the country that are saying that about the Pods.
Yeah. And I've said this multiple times, they don't want to rely on it being the best team in the second half of the season to make the playoffs. And so,
right.
Kevin Acey's been writing about this, obviously being up 7-0. Yeah. Like, as the record, it's wins that they can't take back. And so there's going to be some not great stretches during a season. Every team is going to face that. And this is going to be huge when that ends up coming at some point. You obviously wish it's not going to be extended, but yeah, this 7-0 run here to start, it's perfect. Opening day, they were down 3 times, I think, 3 separate times, and came back and won. Or whether it's the Friday night, Jake Cronenworth pinch hitting, or no, he stayed in the game on Friday, the go-ahead home run, like
against a lefty.
Yeah, against a lefty. Yeah,
right. After your boys, John and Jim, were trying to say you should be platooned against lefties. I heard him saying that.
Yeah, but it's a great start.
And it's an important one. Like I said, like starts are whatever. I was joking today because I looked up at Fangraphs, and Fangraphs has their the playoff odds, and the playoff odds, according to however they calculate this stuff, are better for the Braves than they are for the Padres. So again, I mean, it probably isn't something that you should invest a ton of energy into.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not trying to work like put the stick in the beehive here, but it goes to show you how much there is left to go. That there are projection sites and all sorts of ways to look at it and still determine that the Braves have a better chance than the Padres at reaching the postseason. So, everybody will regress at some point. 7-0s, 0-7s, things like that. But yeah, I mean, as far as it goes, just saying like, well, I don't know. We'll see how this team shows up this year. Man, it's been great. It's been fun to watch, and it's just been clean. It's been super clean to watch them play baseball.
Yeah. Moving on to SDFC, another team that's been exciting. They have 1 loss so far. And that 1 loss was with a lot of key players on international duty. So I've been very encouraged by this team. I love that the city is getting behind this club. Just your overall thoughts, the good and the bad so far through the first 6 matches for SDFC.
Yeah, I mean, I think the good is that they don't look like an expansion team. I think expansion teams, just by definition, are expected to look a little disorganized and sloppy and inferior. I think that would be a word, right? Like by its very definition, you're an expansion team. You probably are going to be inferior to teams that you're facing, especially when you're facing the MLS Cup champions in the first game of the season And then a couple of weeks later, you're facing a team that won the MLS Cup 2 years ago. And then a couple of weeks later, you're facing a team that won the MLS Cup 3 years ago. So, they've thrown them in the gauntlet. I think the way the city has responded has been amazing. I think, it's something that I had long believed, but until you actually see it, you don't know for sure how people are going to respond to it. So, I think that the response from everybody has been fantastic. I think seeing people support it from walks of life that I wouldn't have expected from people that had identified as non-soccer fans, saying like, oh yeah, this is cool. This is great. Like, I really want to go. I really want to experience this. I mean, my former colleague, Marty, is like, hey, I got to get some tickets. So, I think all that sort of stuff, I think it's been great. Obviously it's just getting started. So that it's new. There's a novelty to it. We'll see what it looks like in the middle of the summer, and I suspect if they keep winning, there's still going to be a ton of buzz and energy around it. I think their players have been a lot of fun to be around. I've had a bit of access because they get to go out to the training facility. So I've been able to sit down with some of their players and chat with them and see what they're all about. And across the board, at least in my experience, they've been dudes. Like, they've been really, really fun guys. Their coach is he's a real dude. I know people that work in that building that have worked in other for other soccer clubs. And they're like, this is one of the best culture builders that we've ever been around. So Mikey Varas is getting really, really high praise from people that I know and I trust who have been around professional soccer for decades. They're like, this is one of the best jobs we've ever seen at building a culture in a short amount of time. So, I don't really have much to say that's negative. I just hope everybody can stay healthy. I just do. I hope that Chucky Lozano can stay healthy because, the amount of time that he spent on the field has been super exciting to watch him. He's mesmerizing. You can't really take your eyes off of him. There's so many games, there's like so many games, a 34 game season. It's like, it just keeps going and going and going. And then there's going to be Leagues Cup in the middle of the season. So, we'll learn a lot more about how that's going to work, but it's, and I think it's proven something else, Ben, that there's room for multiple pro sports teams at the major league level in San Diego. When we talked about Saturday going from 42,000, whatever it was, and 32,000 at Snapdragon Stadium, there's something like 73. I'm sure there's some crossover, but 74,000 people that attended sporting events in San Diego on this past Saturday between the afternoon game, Padres and Braves, and then evening game, SDFC and LAFC. That's just a freaking phenomenal day in San Diego. That's just an all-time day in San Diego. And, then you sprinkle in, the excitement that, Wave has generated, and it's like, we just have a really, really good culture. I feel like we just have a really good sporting culture, a balanced sporting culture in San Diego. And, it's a great time to be chatting about it.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously the Padres, we know with the crowds, they're going to sell out. We know SDFC, the excitement to start on. Yeah. San Diego State basketball, we know every year, like, there's excitement there and Viejas packed crowds. San Diego Wave for the NWSL, they continue to have really good attendance and they should be talked about more in this city. No doubt about that in my mind. But yeah, I'm totally fine. I said this the other day. I'm totally fine with having no NFL in this city. Like, I have embraced what we are as this city. Yep. And I'm good with it. I don't need to be talking about NFL or anything like that. I'm good.
I think it's city. I'm with you. And listen, I think that there are some people in San Diego who would trade Major League Baseball, MLS, and NWSL for the NFL right now. That's just the way some people are. And the NFL is the most popular sport in the United States. And you and I can't deny that. There's no point. I mean, that's just the way it is. But in terms of having a balanced sports market, as somebody who worked here when the NFL was here, I don't know that the stuff that's happening with the Padres is possible if the NFL is still here in town, because there was so much competition for local money, et cetera, right? And I don't know that we get MLS. And like I said, I understand somebody who says, yeah, I would trade all of this for the NFL. That's fine, but that wouldn't be me. That wouldn't be me at all, because then essentially what we're doing is, we're just becoming a market where it's the only thing that matters, and that's what the NFL does. It just sucks up all the oxygen in most of these markets. When 1090 went under, I interviewed at a radio station. I mean, interview is probably not the right word, but I had a conversation with somebody at a radio station in Denver. Okay. And think about Denver's Broncos, Rockies, Nuggets, Abs have an MLS team, Colorado State, right? There's a lot of stuff going on there. And this sports radio station's whole tagline was all Broncos all the time. I was like, so you guys, you don't talk about Rockies? They're like, no. And a friend of mine worked for the Rockies. He's like, yeah, they'd rather talk about the backup long snapper than us fighting for a playoff spot in September. He's like, once Bronco season starts around here, it's over. And the NFL just has that effect on sports media. There are a lot of people even still here who would probably tell San Diego radio stations to talk more NFL, right? Because it's the number one sport, and that's goes back to where we started with, these companies being headquartered in other parts of the country. But, I just don't know that we get where we got with the Padres, where we are with the Padres. I don't know that we wouldn't be, because Peter's pretty special, but maybe what made this appealing was the forecast for what was happening in San Diego and MLS and NWSL. I just don't know. I just don't know that we get there. And I kind of like being balanced. I didn't want to, as soon as I heard it's all Broncos all the time in Denver, I was like, that's not for me. That's just not for me. Like if you're telling me like I can't talk about the Rockies and I can't talk about the Nuggets, like that's just not going to be for me. So, I love the way we're situated. I do. I love the way that we're built here. It's not that I wanted to see the Chargers leave, but they made their decision and that's fine. I can live with it and I can make the most of it. And I think you and I are probably not alone.
Yeah, for sure. I did want to ask and just, your thoughts on being with not with SDFC, but being, on the call. This is something that you have wanted for a while, to have MLS in this city. And so it's not the way that we wanted it. I mean, I don't want to speak for you, but I'm sure you wanted San Diego Loyal to be that MLS club with your connection there. But it's cool that, MLS is here. And for you to be a part of it, speaking for myself, I'm super happy that you do get to be a part of that. And just your happiness. Does it sometimes you walking around, do you just have to like stop yourself sometimes and be like, this is actually happening and I'm involved in it?
Yeah, 1,000%. I mean, opening day, like how did I end up in the radio booth? And it's kind of a crazy story how I ended up in the booth for Galaxy, but I won't bore you with all the details. But yeah, like I absolutely did have that. And, I don't think I'm alone. I mean, I'm not the only person that was pushing for Soccer City back in the day. I'm not the only person that was involved with San Diego Loyal. And in between, there was 1904 FC. I was like, oh, maybe this is our opportunity to get professional sports or professional soccer to stick in San Diego. They had some really, really big time backers for that project, European players like Demba Ba and Eden Hazard, and Johan Kabay, who I'm sure nobody knows. But like they had real support for that. I thought that really had a chance. And I was excited when that arrived here because all of these other lower division soccer clubs, the ultimate idea is one of these going to turn into Major League Soccer at some point. So, NC Battalion and Albion, and I can go on and on and on. But, I think that was always what we were looking for is like, what is the club that we're eventually going to be able to call our own? What is the club that we're going to call our own? And you're right. Like for a while, I was hoping that was Loyal, and it was Loyal. I mean, I still see people rocking Loyal gear around town. They left a mark. That's the best thing I could say about them is like they left a mark on the market. Obviously, lower division soccer isn't for everybody. I'm glad that we have MLS. It's something that I campaign for. Probably to the detriment of my own career with some San Diego State fans, but it's just how I felt. It's just what I believed was the right thing to do at the time. So you're right. It is surreal, and I've had that conversation with other people. Maybe this isn't exactly how we would have thought we would have arrived, but, we did arrive here. And I think that's the most important thing. And, just to see people, to be in different neighborhoods around San Diego, Ben, and to see that flag hanging outside of bars and restaurants in places where you're like, wow, it's a surreal feeling to feel like, wow, like this is happening. You always believe that it's going to be a success. And so far through 6, it's been, again, we'll see, there's lots of things that are successful right out of the chute, and it's up to the club to maintain this. And I know that's something that they're well aware of. This is a big building by MLS standards, and I think they're up for it. But yeah, I mean, it's you just got to the point where you're like, it's just never going to happen. It's just never going to happen. It's such a San Diego story that we have everything that would be appealing for a Major League Soccer team, and we just are never going to be able to pull the trigger. And now it has happened, and it sinks in, but it makes you feel good about the things that you thought and were verbalizing and trying to communicate to my audience throughout all those years, the reasons why I thought it would be such a success here. So, we'll see where it goes, but yeah, it's everything I thought it would be. And maybe even a little bit more.
Yeah. Again, happy for you. Happy for all those that, I know that they're loyal employees that went over to SDFC and now they're getting to be a part of it. So well-deserved for this city. Before getting out of here, obviously appreciate your time. For those that know me, those that know Darren, both went to St. John's. And what happened to our Johnnies, man? I mean, are you good with Patino? I was fine with it, with Patino sitting him there because he had struggled.
RJ,
yeah, RJ. But losing to Calipari.
I know. And then the compound things, we were the only 2 seed that didn't make it to the next weekend, to the second weekend, right? Which is always what you want. I always think you've had a successful season if you make it to the second weekend. And I wouldn't say that St. John's didn't have a successful season, because the last time we won an NCAA tournament game, you weren't born. So
I remember in Carnesecca Arena, I would run the stairs in the morning and you see the banners and it's it's been a while. I was, Mike Anderson was the coach, and I couldn't imagine Patino coaching.
That's crazy, and I was there at the end of Carnesecca, and through Fran Fraschilla. But, I mean, I try to say this to people, because I don't think everybody understands that the program, used to be, it wasn't, step by step on the same level as Kansas, Kentucky, North Carolina, Duke. But in terms of all-time wins, when I was in college, Ben, we were third or fourth. We were right there. We were ahead of Duke, I think, on the all-time wins list. We had been to a couple Final Fours. We were a New York City school, so we won the NIT more than anybody else because the NIT mattered. The NIT was the tournament of record long before the NCAA tournament was. And I know that this is this is ancient history for a lot of people, but there's a reason why St. John's fans take a lot of pride in being the program that won the most NITs. It's not because we were left out of the tournament more than anybody else. It's because the NIT used to be the tournament of record, so it mattered. And, the idea that we could go 25 years without an NCAA tournament win is just not something I thought was possible. If Patino couldn't do it, then I didn't think anybody was going to do it. So I'm glad he's returned us back to national prominence. You went to some of those games at Madison Square Garden. There's not a lot of energy there. The only energy sometimes was brought in by other teams' fans. Mm-hmm. I hated it when UConn would fill our building. I hated it when Syracuse would fill our building or Georgetown would fill our building. It made me sick. So I'm glad that I'll even, I know there's been a huge conversation about Spike Lee going to St. John's games and where was he when they were bad? Well, they were bad. He's not going to go when they're bad. So, I'm okay. Let's load up the bandwagon again. And, I'm with you. I thought that their shooting eventually would get to them. I was just hoping it would be in a later round. I thought we could make it because, buddy, I might take a book to San Francisco. I might take a book to San Francisco, and I was going to go. And I was pretty stoked about that. By the way, you want a little insider information here, exclusive?
Yeah.
Who's a huge St. John's fan?
Who is that?
AJ Preller.
Really? Oh, I could see that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yep. So Preller's a guy, and obviously he had opening day, but Preller's a guy who pays very, very close attention to it. So I think seeing what's going to happen, getting us back, this is, being a 2 seed exceeded my expectation. Winning a game is what I would have signed up for before the season started. Mm-hmm. And now it's time to build on that. Patino's gone to Final Fours almost everywhere he's been at every major program. So, I'm hoping that we got another, reload kind of situation here. I saw the transfer portals open and these are names that I'm not 100% familiar with, but people seemingly are excited about who they're bringing in. So, hopefully that's going to be a really, really good thing to build on. And, they'll get a check out of me this year, as an alum. They'll definitely get a check out of me. I got to put my money where my mouth is and support the program. So that's the name of the game. And, I'm happy for my friends at San Diego State, that they continue to, to keep fighting the good fight. And, but I was really excited. Like it was personal. Like it was just so personal for me to finally see that this team was able to get back to the standard that I grew up with, because I think, it was tough to explain to people who we were and like who we used to be. And people were like, I don't, it doesn't resemble that. What are you talking about, old man? This is 30, 40 years ago. Stop. And, now I think people have a sense of how important that program can be when it's firing on all cylinders, and how important it can be, not just for the campus, but for New York and for Madison Square Garden. And that was the best part.
Yeah. And what made it at least a little bit better for me was that Dan Hurley was knocked out pretty early for his standards too.
I love
that
that
guy,
too.
I cannot stand that guy.
The worst. All of those UConn people are the worst, man.
Just
They act like they invented the sport. I mean, my God, it's just, I've had enough of them. They always were. We had longer traditional, more rivalries like with Syracuse and Georgetown and Villanova, but that team in particular, and those fans in particular, are the absolute freaking worst, man. So I'm with you 1,000%. I even like the jab that Patino had. And, for all of our fans driving up to Providence, make sure you wave at stores as you're cruising on by.
Yeah.
So, and I was happy to do that because I know a lot of people in San Diego also are sick and tired of the UConn Huskies.
Yep.
Not just the last couple of years, but, knocking them out in Anaheim back in whatever year that was. So
11, 12.
Yeah. When Kemba Walker, completely flopped with Jamal Franklin. So, I was happy to even celebrate that with some San Diego State fans who were sick and tired of Hurley and the UConn Huskies.
Yeah. All right. Well, Darren Smith, now of Section 1904, building something I think that could be pretty special. So go check it out. Darren, thank you so much for the time, man. Much appreciated.
Hey, buddy, I appreciate you. Keep up the good work. Thanks for the invite. Like I said, sorry it took so long, but I'm glad we got it done.
Of course. All right, everyone, thank you so much for watching or listening, and we'll see you next time.